Washington State University economists will gather stakeholder input in a review of the recent Snake River breaching analysis. Joining us on the PNW Ag Network hotline is WSU's Eric Jessup, research professor and director at Wazoo's Freight Policy Transportation Institute. And Eric, thank you so much for the time. Let's start from the beginning. What is this review all about, and why are you conducting it?
Well, the Washington governor has allocated, $4 million to evaluate the possibility of the Snake River Dam removals. He pushed that through the legislature, and the caveat or the condition that the legislature agreed to was that if they're going to do that, they wanted some type of external, independent review of whoever does that work. And so that's where our study came along. And so they submitted an RFP, and Washington State submitted a proposal, and we were selected to do that independent review. I think primarily because we've done a lot of work in this area. As it relates to river transportation, we know and have worked closely with most all of the stakeholders involved. That would be, of course, the people moving products up and down that river system. So I think it was a natural that we'd be selected for that.
So, Eric, without getting too much into the weeds, can you kind of give us an overview of exactly how's this study going to be done?
So our review is composed of, really two large parts. One of them is just actually reviewing the academics here, myself and Jake Wagner and the folks involved in the Freight Policy Transportation Institute. We will review everything that the other team produces. And right now they are producing or in the process of developing a model that illustrates all the flows that utilize that river system in some way. And then later in the year or first part of the next year, look at scenarios for how that would happen, how transportation would happen if the dams were removed on the Snake River. So the first part of this effort is just reviewing what they produce, how they do it, whether it's scientifically rigorous, are they doing it accurately. We then, in the second part, we've comprised this group of stakeholders we're calling the River Transportation Working Group, and these are all those vested interests who depend upon that river in some way for navigation. And we then, all of the information that we review, we provide to that group and allow them feedback, input, and reaction to what it is that we've reviewed and what the other team has produced.
Eric, it seems like this review really points to how the Columbia and Snake River Dam system really impacts a variety of individuals, a variety of organizations across the whole Pacific Northwest.
That's certainly the case. I think most people average consumers don't really understand the complexity of how that river system touches a lot of people's lives. But certainly if you're talking about our ag interest for grain farmers here in the Pacific Northwest, they utilize that river to access export markets. And yes, for navigation, they use it not just for obtaining markets for delivering export commodities, but also for access to things like fuel and fertilizer for products coming up the river, mostly being dropped off there at Central Ferry or in some cases down in the Tri-Cities to access relatively cheap inputs.
Eric, I know it's kind of early in the process, but what sort of timeline is associated with this kind of review?
Well, our contract with the state legislature only goes for 1 year currently. There's intention, I think, to expand that for the same time horizon as the $4 million study. But the horizon on their deliverables, they are expected to have their model of current existing flows by the end of this year. And then next year is when they're supposed to start evaluating changes to that system if you remove the dams. And primarily what they're being asked is what types of infrastructure investments would be necessary to accommodate that happening should it ever happen. And of course, in some respects, they are being asked to do something that, of course, none of the businesses that rely upon that system have ever been asked to do. And so there's a high degree of uncertainty about how markets would react. And so trying to identify where infrastructure investments need to occur, and I'm talking about maybe highway investments, rail investments, port investments, potentially even private facility investments. That would all, that's all conditional upon how they model that system.
So, Eric, if somebody wants to learn more about the review and how things are progressing, or perhaps they feel like, hey, I'm a stakeholder, I should have my 2 cents put into this review, should they contact you, or have you already determined who exactly you're going to speak with?
We've comprised the River Transportation Working Group, and these are the key stakeholders in the region. And the language, the bill that the legislature, they identified who they wanted on that group. But I believe it is the right stakeholders. And so this would be the grain producers, the grain merchants, fertilizer companies, fuel companies, barge operators. It truly is the people that depend upon that river system in some way for navigation. And so I think we've comprised that, but by all means, if anyone can reach out to us at any time, and we're happy to include them in the communications and make them aware of what's happening. And when products are being produced, meaning our review outputs, we'll make them available to them as well. So at any time, we welcome input.
Eric Jessup, research professor and director at WSU's Freight Policy Transportation Institute. Thanks so much for joining us right here on the PNW Ag Network.